Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Well, hey everybody, welcome to yet another episode of the Higher Line podcast. We just actually started the whole thing over again because the furnace kicked on. I'm with my new friend, Warren Stout, and Warren was just telling us about where we're at. We're in Zealand and Opal.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
North of Pittsburgh. It's a small town north of about 35 minutes outside of Pittsburgh.
It's a beautiful little town. And kind of why I wanted to visit with him and share his story with you is it's a pretty cool story. And I'm going to change what we started to talk about a minute ago. I travel all over the country, and so I'll reach out to friends of mine and say, hey, I'm going to be in this area or that. Where's a good gym I can drop into and learn something and not get beat up or broken? And two dudes who I respect the hell out of, they saw on the map where I was, and they said, you got to go see Warren. So that was House Gracie and Todd Fox. And so that's how I came to meet you and know who you are. So you've got 4 gyms here in the Pittsburgh area, and you've got a background in wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and
I did a little bit of MMA, and I've coached MMA. I fought a few times MMA, and I coach MMA also.
That was a lovely segue for casting couch joke, but you didn't take it. I've got it right too.
You got me with that one before we started going on air.
So you've got a storied background in wrestling. You started telling us you high school wrestling stud that went on to a big college wrestling career. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was. There's so many great wrestlers, especially in this area. This area is a hotbed of wrestling, world hotbed. Pittsburgh was considered by, if you go to Russia, they know about Pittsburgh wrestling, right? It's a Japan. It's a great area for wrestling. And I was a good wrestler. I wasn't an Olympic champion or anything, but I wrestled through high school. My grandfather was a great coach here in Pennsylvania, and then
you said he was
he's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he's in the PA Hall of Fame. He wrestled in college also, and then I was a 2-time state runner-up in Pennsylvania, and I went on to wrestle at Lehigh University. I had such a great experience there. It was some of the best coaches in any domain that I've ever experienced. Greg Strobel and Pat Santoro were great coaches, and we had a good program. We finished 5th as a team in the country in Division I that year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was one of the things I remember when I was finishing my college wrestling. I was talk. You have to give a talk at the end at Lehigh, and I said that I didn't really accomplish as much as I wanted, but I think everybody in wrestling can say that almost.
When you say you had to give a talk, like all of the wrestlers?
Yeah, just like an end of the year kind of wrestling thing. You kind of recap your college, your career, and your experience and stuff. And that's
who are you talking to? Just the other wrestlers?
The wrestlers and some of the alumni and the donors and stuff like that at Lehigh. Just kind of the wrestling group of Lehigh, and that was just something I said I wasn't satisfied with how my career went, to be honest. But I think almost everybody could say that, right? Like it's something.
What would you have wanted to change?
I would have wanted to be a national champ. I would have wanted. I would have. That was always the goal, And I wasn't, and but there's always the next level, right? If you're a national champ, you want to be a 2-time national champ or a 4-time national champ, and then if you want to be you want to be an Olympic champ, there's always another level, and I'm sure almost everybody could say their career wasn't perfect, but I enjoyed it, and I think that's what led me to doing this, to jiu-jitsu.
I have never competed at a high level like that. I've got a handful of friends. Division I baseball, football, hockey, wrestling, and that still puts you at a little layer in the stratosphere of athletes, especially in that world. It's not like you could hang with pretty much anybody on the planet out in the street at that level.
Yeah, and for me it's fun too, because even now I mentioned my who's the assistant coach, Pat Santoro. He's now the head coach at Lehigh University, and he still comes to Pittsburgh pretty often for recruiting and matches and whatnot. And he often stops by to see me, and we just wrestle around.
How old is
he? He's probably, I want to say mid-50s now, mid to late 50s, and he.
So he's got 10, 12 years on you.
Yeah, something like that. And he still is active on the mat. And what I guess to talk to like the level I was at, I'm at a level where it's fun for some guy like that who is a 2-time national champ, world, like I saw him beat a Russian world champion in freestyle in a match and things like that. And
that's cool.
And I can wrestle with him. One of my jiu-jitsu teachers, the guy that influenced me most in jiu-jitsu, Shawn Williams, said one time, he said, jiu-jitsu, you can see it as a conversation, right? And the better both people are, the different the conversation is going to be, the high level conversation. And I guess I was good enough at wrestling where I can have a conversation, metaphorical conversation
Sure.
with Pat Santora. So that's what my level was.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How'd you get into jiu-jitsu?
So one of the guys that you mentioned, Hollis Gracie, was my first teacher. Okay. And I've told this story before, so I won't go super into it. But
But you haven't told it here, so I won't hear.
Yeah, there was a forum, and back this pre-social media.
About what year you think?
2001, 2002, but in that year.
So nearly a quarter century ago.
Yeah, and so Hollis posted on the AD Combat Forum, ADCC Combat Forum, that he wanted wrestlers to come down and teach him, help him with his feet to floor, his takedowns, and just work out with him. And he was gonna, give him room and board and come down to, to have him come to Brazil. And my friend Dan Hyman, who's he trained at Cesar Gracie's in California in high school, so very early on in the 90s. He had that connection, and he found this post on the forum, and he called me on the.
So you're like 21 at the time?
22.
22.
And the first cell phone I owned, I had it for a business I was doing, and I got a call from Dan, and he said, "You want to go to Brazil?" And I was like, "Yes." I didn't even ask him. And he, and then he told me about Hollis. So 2 days after I graduated, we flew down. I flew down separately from him, but we flew down and met Hollis in Brazil, and I stayed with him and lived with him, and that's how I started. So I feel super lucky that I always tell people, it's really important how you start. And, it's not that if you have a bad start, you can't recover, but I had a great teacher from the get-go, and that made a big difference for me.
I read something that you wrote online that you said that you were something to the effect of you're glad that he was your first jiu-jitsu teacher.
Yeah.
Now you said Shawn was the most influential.
Yeah.
But why would you be happy that Hollis was your first teacher?
Because he was so technical, and he had such a grasp on jiu-jitsu, and he's a good guy too. We're still friends, Hollis and I. Hollis later moved to the United States, and he's been here to Pittsburgh and things like that. And I've been to his school and things, and trained with him since then. But it was just a really lucky person to start with, and the circumstances too were really cool, because it was before anybody knew not anybody, but it was new, and jiu-jitsu was still new back then. And I went to Brazil and just living with Hollis. We were training all the time. It was all day. It wasn't like you go to class or something. And we were really living the lifestyle. And
how long were you down there?
I was only down there. We were with Hollis for like 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, and living with him for 3 months.
That's pretty immersive, though.
It was a great start, and then I moved back to New York City, and I started at Renzo's, Renzo Main Academy, which is also great. That's a great place. But I just to kind of speak to how obscure it was to the average person. I grew up in a rural area north of here, and my mom didn't really understand what I was doing. She was telling people back home that she's like, yeah, my oldest son, he has a hot dog stand in Brazil. But,
she just didn't know what to tell him.
Didn't understand, so she just kind of somehow that got made it up or something.
She could wrap her head around a hot dog stand.
I was pushing a hot dog stand around the beach, I guess, or something.
That wouldn't be too shabby. That would be all right.
Kind of a cool thing too.
So you come back up here. Enzo's name is on the wall.
Yeah.
And you start training under him and Danaher and some other cats.
Yeah. I met John Danaher and Shawn Williams when they were brown belts, and they were kind of the main, at least of the American instructors at Renzo Main at that time.
Okay.
And we both with John and Shawn, we just, I guess just got along really well. And I recognized right away how how great they were as teachers. You know, it was, I think because I had great wrestling coaches, you know, and so I could recognize, I think that's a skill in itself. It's easy to know that John's great now because he's produced great students and everybody says he's great, and Shawn kind of this, you know, the same thing. But back then, you know, they were just guys in the academy, just anybody else. But I just was like, these guys are amazing, and I still think they're amazing. I
think you're just kind of driving at this point that you had this database in your head of what a good coach or teacher was because of the wrestling background.
Yeah.
You weren't just like, oh, they're good at jiu-jitsu, these guys are cool.
No, I recognized they were amazing coaches.
Okay.
You know? And I thought they're amazing people too. But and then I got to train with them a lot, and that was really my style. You know, like I said, I had a great start in jiu-jitsu.
So how many years did you spend up in New York?
So I was in New York. I guess it was about a year and a half. I was there.
And then you went from there to California?
No, I actually went to Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
I was working in New York, and I kind of on a whim. I don't know if I ever did say this before, but I read my journal that I had kind of journaled and taken jiu-jitsu notes and whatnot when I went to Brazil with Hollis. And I picked it up, you know, 2 years in or something like that, and picked it up and started reading it. And I was like, man, that was great. I got to do something like that. And I was thinking, where should I go? I'm gonna go to South America. I'm gonna go somewhere just on a trip, just on another adventure or whatever. So I decided to go short vacation in Costa Rica. Well, I went, and then I came back to New York City and was working and, you know, training. I loved the training, but I didn't love what I was doing working for like a big company. And I just packed it about 4 months in. After that, I just packed up a bag and moved to Costa Rica. One way,
Let's go back a second. What'd you go to college for?
I went to Lehigh. I was economics and finance under the science school in Lehigh.
Okay. So what were you doing for work at that time?
I was at like a consulting. I was like a low-level consulting for. It was like a chemical company, you know.
So you just
called it. I don't think it exists anymore. So it was a big company at the time. It's called Deo Nalco. One of my coaches helped me get the job.
But you were not into it.
I was not into it, and it just wasn't didn't suit my personality. And I did a little bit. I was like the lowest level on the New York Stock Exchange, and I did that a little bit when I first got back from Brazil, and then I got the other job, and just didn't.
So you're like punching the clock. This sucks. Did you sell all your stuff, pack it up, take it to mom and dad's basement? What'd you do?
Pretty much, yeah. I didn't really have a lot of stuff. I was single, you know. I just like I said, I just packed a bag for some clothes, and I was like, I'm just gonna see how this goes, you know. And the jiu-jitsu was really what kept me though in Costa Rica at that time. I talked to Shawn Williams. I remember him telling me, he's like, oh, he said he was a purple belt. He's like, there's this guy Mauro Sergio. He's down there because I was like, I want to check out the jiu-jitsu down there. I'm not gonna stop training. And he's like, he's good. He's a Shawn Gracie black belt, and in Costa Rica. So I think the second or third day I was in Costa Rica, I was at Mauro's school, and through him I met a lot of people and connections, and I just decided to stay.
That's cool. Where was that at?
He was in San Jose, Costa Rica.
Okay, in the big city.
In the city, yeah. And he was the first one that he really started jiu-jitsu in Costa Rica. Mauro was an interesting guy. He was a Shawn Gracie guy, and I know you know about this, but Shawn was a character. He was he's a guy that would get in street fights, and then Mauro kind of patterned himself after that.
No.
And yeah, so I think there was good and bad in that. I don't like that. That's not my demeanor or whatever, but I ended up getting involved in some of the stuff because I was with Mauro. I was one of his main, you know.
You guys are out thugging around the streets of San Jose, Costa Rica.
That's what it was, and it was, sometimes it was uncomfortable, it was fun, sometimes wild experiences, but at the same time, Costa Rica at that time was like, and other people have told me this too, like Daniel Gracie has told me this, it was like Brazil and Rio back in the early 80s or something, you know, and nobody knew what jiu-jitsu was, and Costa Rica, there's some parts of the culture that are kind of like tough street fighting culture as well, and so it was almost like, I'm not saying that's the way to be, and I'm not like that as far as like thugging or like you said, but I think it did. There was an aspect of that that proved it, that proved jiu-jitsu was a real thing.
Tasting whether or not it works.
Yeah.
The city he's talking about, which is the capital in Costa Rica, is some people say it's the most opulent Central American city. It's got like old world, beautiful buildings and architecture, Spanish style architecture. And then there's some like straight up crime ridden areas. So you can go from like beautiful markets and museums and like culture.
Almost side by side.
Yeah.
Cross a little like street or river or something. Yeah, it's like that. It's a great. Costa Rica is beautiful. I'm going there in a couple weeks. But
I pissed somebody off in traffic in San Jose one day on a motorcycle. I don't even know what I was trying to drive cool, and he drives up and just hammer fists the mirror off of my rental car. I was just like, I'm not saying shit. Sorry.
Let that one go. I got
Yeah, sorry. They were just like, boom, hammer fisted right off. I was just like, all right.
Well, when you go down there, you go to Heroes up in Tamarindo.
Yeah.
Up in the northwest.
Yep. Ron and Holly's place.
Yeah.
Yes.
And do you do trainings up there also, right?
So my coach, Dan Hart, runs camps there. So when I'm there, we just help and people beat me up.
Yeah. Have you ever done any shooting training there with camps or anything?
No, I have not. I got a couple people that we've met there over the years that are like, kind of like the dudes that run the tourist stuff, fishing and waterfall hikes and stuff. And, they talk about firearms. It sounds like they've got an interesting culture there where a lot of people don't have access to firearms, and the laws are a little sketchy, so I don't know about any of that.
They are a little sketchy. I just got my shooting permit officially in Costa Rica last year, and I think there's a really a need for like what you do there. Honestly,
how did you procure a firearm there? Where do you go?
So it's a process, and there's stores you can buy firearms there, right? The local Costa Ricans can buy firearms, but you have to pass. It's a written test in Spanish, and then you have to pass a like a shooting test, and then you have to go get your fingerprints and things like that. There's so many laws around how you can carry the firearms, how you can, what type of firearms you're allowed to have in certain situations. And you're only allowed to have 2 of certain types of firearms.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's a little bit restrictive. I don't necessarily, my personal philosophy and I guess political philosophy, I don't agree with that, but that's the way it is down there. And I think not only just for the Costa Rican people, but also for Americans. I think it'd be cool. We should do like a conjunction, like a jiu-jitsu, like
let's do it,
something like that. Yeah.
So you are married to a Costa Rican, right?
I am, yeah. Crystal Johannings, my wife is from Costa Rica. Her family is, they've been business people down there for 100 years.
So did you meet her on this first excursion to San Jose when you were out beating people up?
Yeah. So the second time when I moved down there, kind of more or less, I was down there for about 5 years. I met her about a year into that.
Okay.
So yeah, and then we've been married I think 17 years now, and so it's been a while.
So your personal life is deeply embedded in the Costa Rican culture, and
yeah, it is, and I've done camps down there before, and we go down a lot there. I spent 6 months down there last year, just with my family, my children and my wife.
It's a beautiful country.
Yeah, it's great.
Beautiful. So fast forward, you are in New York. You go to Costa Rica. How'd you end up in California then?
So Shawn Williams moved to California.
Okay.
I mentioned Shawn Williams, pretty well-known guy, but he's a guy that announces. If you don't know him, he's a guy that announces a lot of the big events for like WNO, ADCC. He's the announcer, and he's just a great coach, just really respected coach. But he moved from New York City to LA and started Renzo Gracie LA, and then we were always really good friends, since the New York times. And he came down to Costa Rica. I ran an MMA event down there, and he came down and helped with that. Just always, we're friends as well as like him being my teacher. And he said, I was coming up to California all the time to compete in jiu-jitsu because there was no competitions in Costa Rica. And it got to the point where I felt like I needed to go somewhere else to progress in jiu-jitsu. That was the main driver of my wanting to come. And Shawn's like, hey, I'll give you a job, come up to LA and work at my school. So I worked at his school. I worked some of the admin stuff, and then I was a teacher at Shawn's school. So that's
cool.
That's how I moved to LA. That's why I moved to LA.
I think I read, combing through your website, that he gave you your 3rd stripe on your black belt.
Yeah, he gave me a couple of my belts. He gave me my blue belt actually in at Renzo's.
Okay.
And then he gave me my brown belt, and he was there when I got my black belt also. I was really glad he was there. But and he's given me, I think I'm supposed to be a 4th degree. You know, they give you stripes every year. It's just by time you've been a black belt, and he's given me, I think, 2 of them. So 2 of the, just because you have to, it would probably be him or, you know, Hollis or Daniel Gracie or Renzo could give them, and that's, I see Shawn or John Danner, I guess, but he doesn't do many stripes and things like that. But I think that
Why'd you laugh at that about John? Like, why? So to the uninitiated,
I just John's just, you know, he does mostly no. First of all, he trains mostly without the gi, and
he lives in a rash guard.
yeah, he does. I did some gi training with John in New York a few times, but he mostly does no gi, and I don't know, he doesn't put a lot of emphasis on like the belt things, and I don't honestly either. I think there's almost as many bad things about jiu-jitsu belts as there are good things about it.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So bad things about it. People use it to it's completely subjective. There's no standardized systems, everybody knows. But then people use it to compare themselves to other people. And I just don't think that makes any sense, you know? And I think it can also promote internally in schools kind of that cult mentality, which I abhor. I hate that. Like the thing where like just that kind of thing that you get with some traditional, that unfortunately happened with some traditional martial arts, where you have this like teacher or leader or sensei that they, you know, people kind of put on a pedestal and act like a cult leader, which that's the opposite, you know, probably because I came from a wrestling background or maybe my personality. I just don't like that kind of stuff. So I think those are bad things about it.
So there was no wrestlers that were up on a pedestal?
They were, but it was because of their work ethic or their ability, or their personality even. It wasn't because some other authority figure gave them a belt.
Sure,
right?
sure.
And I think jiu-jitsu and wrestling and all combat sports are so beautiful because you don't need that to say you're above, you know, you don't need to compare yourself with that. You just go on the mats and you know where you're at.
The mat don't lie.
Yeah, that's yeah. So those are some of the bad things. Some of the good things, it is useful as an organizational tool for schools and for competition. I like that. I like the jiu-jitsu. I know there was just recently Helen Maroulis, Olympic champion, best American female wrestler ever, just competed in IBJJF Worlds. And
Does she have any jiu-jitsu?
She trained for maybe like 3 months.
Okay.
But everybody was mad because they said she was sandbagging because she was competed at blue belt, and she won. She beat everybody really easy. But we had this big argument about that, and I think what came out of it was it is good for, you know, between me and my friends, it was good it is good to have levels. You know, it's like jiu-jitsu is great with that. You have levels of belts and you have level age groups and things like that. So I can still compete if I want to, you know, I think that's a good thing about it. I think another good thing about it, and this is like when I got my black belt, I didn't think, oh, I'm better than another black belt. Because I probably was brown belts that could tap me out. One of my brown belts, I think, got me last week and something, when I was a purple belt, I beat black belts in tournaments, you know, like
sure.
I think that you can be proud of, I'm proud that, you know, Renzo thought I was good enough to give me a black belt and carry on like his legacy. You know what I mean? I think that's something good about it, where you can say, hey, I'm proud, and that's really individual. That's just between kind of like you and your teacher, you know, in a way, you know, because you say like, I'm proud that my teacher thought that I was good enough to kind of carry on their thing, you know.
That's something I think is missing in a lot of the, like, I grew up doing a lot of Eastern martial arts, kung fu, taekwondo, you know, like, I don't know if you were probably wrestling in that time. I was learning the dim mak.
Yeah.
If you know what that is?
The death touch.
The death touch, yeah.
Touch.
No, he passed the exam. You know, like that stuff was super, the Karate Kid and all that stuff was out. So like all of those types of martial arts.
I did Ishinru karate when I was young too. I liked it.
All of that, like, I talk about this in our shooting class. You walk into those places and there's the picture of the guy from, 1632 that created it, and the flag from Korea or Japan or whatever. And then this like lineage on the wall, and you bow to all of it. Like, in a sense, I think I don't disagree with you, what your earlier point, but I think we like miss some of that. Like, I bow to the mat when I walk on and off of it, and I don't care if anybody sees me do it. And I've heard, like, had little kids or something go like, why'd you do that? And I'll explain it to them. Like, I think sometimes it's turned too much into, I don't know, like middle-aged guy fun time for a couple hours, and they forget, like, that dudes were in 3 months in Brazil sweating it out, getting beat to death.
Yeah.
And that guy's a monster, by the way. How his hands are like this big.
Oh yeah, he's a big guy.
I could just see him stuffing you into the mat. You probably held your own, but like all of that stuff that people did for hundreds of years, like that means something too. And that, like, to this lineage of honor that you're talking about, I feel like some schools or instructors or just the people themselves, that culture sometimes is missing. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, and I think maybe I didn't articulate that exactly what I meant. I actually agree with you 100% on that, and I think it needs to be. What I'm talking about is more not honoring traditions, not respecting people that got us to where we are, the long tradition. It's more of like comparing yourself to others. And I think what you said, when you bow to the mat, that's authentic. You feel a lot of respect, I'm sure, for what you're doing, and the tradition and stuff like that.
And even like this place, I've trained here 20 or 30 times. Part of it is, man, this guy worked his ass off to put this building together, to put these mats here, and pays for the chemicals to clean the mat, and has all these people here, so I can come here when I'm visiting and get hot and sweaty and learn something like that. That's kind of all of that encapsulated, I think.
I think those things both have to be mutual respect. Like, I really appreciate that, and I think I dedicated a lot of my life to this, and I think it's because I like it, but also I think that it has to go both ways, like that respect. I would never, like, just an example, like I don't say, hey, my students have to mop the mats or something. If they're my employee and that's what their job is, they mop the mats, or I mop the mats, or whatever. But it's not like I'm some reason.
So you don't do the white belt scrub the floor.
I don't like the hierarchical thing that much. I think there should be respect, but it doesn't. But there's a balance with that. Like that's kind of how
I'm paying to be here. I shouldn't have to clean the floor.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, there's two kind of things that are a little bit conflicting when you come to any martial arts school, I think, or even I guess yoga or anything like that. There's a transactional aspect to it, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm also a small business person. Like I make a living doing this, and a lot of other people. We have many other people that make a living here with my schools, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Sure.
It can sometimes come into conflict when people don't understand it completely, what the rules are. Like there's jiu-jitsu is transactional, but there's another part of it that's not. And I think where that changes is when you go from being, like you said, the 40-year-old enthusiast that just wants to come in and do it. That's great. That's more on the transactional aspect of the spectrum. When you get into competitors and fighters and things like that, that starts to shift a little bit to the other side of the spectrum, in my opinion, where you, it's not about being transactional. Example, like people are talking about, like let's take Gordon Ryan and John Danaher.
Okay.
I don't think that John would accept money for what he does for Gordon and some of the other guys. I really don't. I don't. But even if he did, Gordon wouldn't have been able to pay him that when he first started out.
Sure. It was a relationship.
It was a relationship.
Yeah.
It was a coach mentor. So it's a spectrum. It's like everything else. You can't say it's black and white, like it's only transactional or it's only this. I think it's a spectrum, and I think some of the confusion is where students should kind of have some, at least a subconscious idea of where they fit in, what they want to get out of it, right? And I think that makes that a lot more clear. It makes a better relationship with your school when you kind of have an idea of that.
You've got 4 locations.
Yeah.
With over 1,000 students.
Yeah.
And why should somebody come here? I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch for your school, but like it seems like you 20 years ago you had to travel to other states. Now there's 10 of these schools in a single town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, how do you differentiate yourself? What's the sales pitch to come here? What are you guys passing on?
Well, I do think, I honestly wouldn't even say everybody should come here, right? I would say, I'd say we serve a pretty big demographic, and that's why, that's why we have a lot of students, I guess. That's one of the reasons. I think, I would say if you want to come here, you should experience I think it's the environment. I want to say vibe, but that's a little kind of a, just.
What's wrong with saying vibe?
I don't know. It's like, it sounds kind of, vibe, we have a good vibe, but no, it is. It's the environment, right? Like that you come in and you've trained here. We take it seriously, but we're not stuffy. It's accessible to, you'll have competitors training alongside enthusiasts, right? And I think that my goal when I started the school, I saw, again, I'll talk about a spectrum. Like I saw they have great competitors, there's just killers, or maybe I have 30 of them, but the guy, the mat's dirty and they can barely keep the lights on, and the guy has to work another job or something, or what, he's always trying to like extort his students to help him get money. And,
sure.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's the McDojos that, you can tell that they don't really, I don't think they really even care about jiu-jitsu anymore. They care about maybe they care mostly about making money or something. And it's nobody's completely on one side or the other of that probably, but I was like, can I do both, right? Can I have authentic school, real competitors, and also make a good living and make a good business and make how other people that want to do this in Pittsburgh make a living, my friends, my employees, and my students, and I didn't know if I could do it, honestly. I I learned about the business. I worked, like I said, for Shawn Williams at his school. I had some other business experience. I did consulting with a few people, but mostly with Pat Cooligan, another Renzo guy. He had a big chain of schools in Ottawa, Canada, and he still does consulting, I believe, but a friend of mine. But I did with him. Maul Easton, another guy, he helped out Shawn Williams and I with some consulting. Amal has a big chain of schools, maybe the biggest in the country in Colorado. East Colorado, he has 8 schools.
What's the name of those?
Easton Martial Arts, and he's the same as me. I mean, he was with when I went to Brazil. When I first went to Brazil with Hollis, and I was living with Scotty. He was one of the guys. Amal Easton was one of the guys in the group there, and he then went up and started. I think he already had his school. He's a Renzo black belt also, but he's had UFC fighters. He's had ACC trial winners. So he's a legitimate. He has big schools. Like I think he has 7 of them, and. We had some mutual employees. One guy came and worked for me, worked for him. So, I learned from a lot of other people, the business aspect of it. And I was like, can I do this? Can I create that balance? And I think we have. And if that's what you're looking for, I think that's why you should come to the schools here in Pittsburgh.
How long have you been in business?
So this week is, I think, our 15th anniversary.
Oh, very cool.
Since I started teaching here, I started a little school. I lived above it, an apartment above it, and I was working another job at first, and just because I couldn't make a living doing this, and at first until I got it going, and then that was 15 years ago. Yeah, Pittsburgh. Just about this week, we opened in a big snowstorm 15 years ago.
Kind of like the one happening outside right now. That's the legit. There's snow is just filling the windows outside. What have you learned? What would you change if you could go back 15 years? Like, was there stuff where you're like, God dang, that took a lot of time, it didn't have to, or that was a stupid waste of energy, or?
I think there was a lot of things, like as far as business-wise, there's a lot of maybe little missteps. I don't think I did any major bad things. I think a lot of it was just balancing stuff, right? Balancing having a family, competing myself, growing the business. You can't do all those things, right? You can't do all of them equally. You can't do all of them at the same time. I think people that want to have a school that also want to do those other things, you have to be aware that one of the other ones is going to suffer. And I'm not just saying that from my experience. It's been my experience. It's like what you're saying. What would I change? I guess I would change the balance on that in certain times. For example, I wrestle a lot and I like to compete, and I fought MMA a little bit also, and I think I had a really young family too when I started off here in Pittsburgh, and I think I would have skewed the balance a little bit more to, and maybe I saying this now is easy to say, but at that time from maybe 2015, I wish I would have competed a little bit more in jiu-jitsu. I kind of took off and I kind of focused a little bit more on growing the schools and my young family and coaching other people. But I do wish, I guess a regret, you could say, if it's a regret, I wish I would have skewed that balance a little bit more to some more competition when I was, I guess, more in my competitive prime. So I guess that's my answer. But I specific examples that I would have, I really can't think of anything other than maybe, the big part of schools is it's all people, the business, and there were a few people that I maybe trusted that I would have not, but generally I've had a really great experience with people that are. I have a guy that's was on that first day in a snowstorm still training with me.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I have most of my training partners and employees are still with us. So I haven't had a lot of split offs or anything, but I've had a couple of those that I maybe, and I'll say this is if it's like a lesson to anybody that's going through this, I kind of knew, you have a sense about people, and I should have known, but yeah.
I know there's 2 times in my adult life where I knew stay away from that guy. Not like they looked like good people, families, businesses, but something in my guts, and I did keep my distance, and then both of them kind of glommed onto me. Yeah. And both of them caused so much grief over a 3-year period. 2 grown men that are just drama queens, and they're both kind of in the space that I'm in, and I don't talk to either of them anymore. They don't talk to me, but I look back and it was why did I not what I knew, I even said, somebody's why are you so standoffish to that one guy? And I'm I don't know, man, something just doesn't feel right about it. And then they got their hooks in, and it was I just as much to blame, I suppose, but yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
That you can ruin businesses, ruin reputations.
Well, I never had a partner either, as far as a full business partner, and I think that was nice in a way because I didn't have to go through that, right? Mm-hmm. And I also didn't have to. I see a lot of that not going well with jiu-jitsu schools long term. I don't know. I feel like some of my employees are now sort of my partners in a way, and
they've got to buy into the
and they are actually, I gave some of them profit share and stuff, and
that's cool.
Yeah, and they've been with me a long time, but as far, I do think you have to have one captain of the ship, at the end of the day. I think it's important because that's really my role. I think that's setting priorities and kind of that is because I got great guys. I mean, there's some of them are better coaches than me, probably. Some of them are, my striking coaches know a lot more about striking than me, for sure. I think some of them are one of my coaches, Mike Wilkins, is a great coach in the moment, MMA corner guy. He's a better corner guy. I corner people, but he's better at it. But I think what I still bring value to our schools and our organization is. It's kind of like that, just kind of the main thing, steering priorities and what are we going to do and this or not that and things like that. So that's a big part of what I have to do. So,
what's fitness look like for you? So you just got back from doing some beauty treatments for your knees.
Yeah, I did. I went to CPI. It's my third time to CPI.
It's our mutual friend Scott's place down in Mexico.
Yes, CPI, Scott Nelson, he was one of the founders of that, and I met him. So I had injuries, a lot of injuries over the years, and I helped with one of my students, Lonnie Howard, and Big Lon on the internet. He's Wiz Khalifa's bodyguard and friend and things like that, and he started a High Rollers tournament, which was a cannabis jiu-jitsu event, or in
get high and roll, baby.
And I helped him with the first one. It was wild stories. We did.
I want a nickname like Big Lon.
He's big. Yeah. He's it's very appropriate for him. But he started that High Rollers, and I told him I'd help him if he was going to actually start it. I'm not I'm not a big, cannabis advocate. I use cannabis sometimes, but I'm not a big advocate of it. But I just want to help him because he's my friend, And so it was crazy at first. We did this thing in a weird place in LA, and Eddie Bravo was refereeing, but I think he got too high for one of the matches, and I jumped in. And
so was the premise actually to smoke and then roll?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so it wasn't just like okay.
Yeah, it's a wild event. It was on it got some like national attention and stuff, mostly good, But anyway, we had some real crazy times, like the early ones. They were like anything when you started. It was some
unrefined.
Completely unrefined, And so we did that, and I was a referee. And Scotty,
keep going.
Yeah, and Scotty came up to one of those, Scott Nelson, and this was one of the later ones when it was already kind of established, and they had their own venue in Vegas and everything, and so Scott and I were sitting there, and we're talking about injuries, and I was like, what are you doing now? I hadn't seen him for 2 years or so, and he said, about CPI, about the stem cells, and he just convinced me to do it, right? But I still didn't pull the trigger and go down and do it. And then I saw Mike Caramillo, who's the head no-gi instructor at Renzo, New York, came with a group to do a charity seminar for We Defy, the organization for veterans at my schools here, and I hadn't seen Mike in a couple of years. I used to train with him in New York. I go out to New York a lot, but I hadn't seen him in a little while. And he could barely walk time before I saw him. And
just knees and hips busted up.
Knees and ankles, I think, mostly in his case. But the first thing I walked into the school, they were there, and I walked in, and Mike's sitting on his heels, and I couldn't do that.
Oh, wow.
I was like, the first thing I did, I walked over to him and I said, Mike, what did you do? How are you doing that? Because he really couldn't. He couldn't even probably walk up the steps here before that. And he's like, I got stem cells. And then I think as soon as that weekend event was over, I called up Scotty and I said, like, hey, I want to come down to CPI. And so I set up a full thing there, and I think got a lot of my joints done, but my knees particularly were bothering me. And so this is my third treatment. I just got back this week.
Third in like a year and
third in a year. In a year, yeah, in a year. So I got back, and just Saturday I flew back, and yeah, I'm a little stiff. It definitely got a lot better. The inflammation, I recommend it. I mean, I always tell people, like, the only thing you can lose is the little bit of money, and it's kind of a fun trip too. You get down there, and everybody thinks Tijuana is like dangerous or something, but it's a great food city, and you're at the clinic most of the time anyway, so it's not bad. So I definitely recommend that.
That's a crazy discussion point of you're naming different guys. Like I was with Scotty in Montana this summer with a group of friends, and he hasn't been on the mat in years and years because of some injuries, and so we rolled around a little bit. And you think about like all of this, it's your living, it's your livelihood, it's your passion, and then you trade. You're a young man, and you have trash knees. Wrestling probably had a lot to do with that.
It did, yeah.
But I'm going through. I've lost one of the muscles in my right arm. I've become friends with Boss Rutan because of it, talking about it with his arm.
Yeah.
From, I'd say screwing around, but training and like.
Are you right-handed too? I
am.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't tie my shoes a year ago. Yeah, well. I couldn't even use my hand, and it's coming back. But I guess my point is just like. This trade-off, you hear guys say like, well, I wouldn't trade it, for anything. I got to taste this glory. Like I didn't taste shit, man. I just, get beat up by guys in mats. I got no medals, no trophies, no, my picture's not on the wall anywhere. And that's not a sour grapes or anything. But
no, I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. It's there's a trade-off there too. Like it really is, and I think I don't even think you can talk about it in this, for me, like, I don't think I can talk about it in the sense of like, oh, I regret it or what I would do, because it's just so much a part of who I am, that I couldn't separate myself from doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So I can't imagine, but, so you say, well, is it worth it? Do I recommend it? I don't know if I want. I think it's been unbelievable. There's so many benefits to it, mental, physical. I think I'm staying in better shape physically than I might have if I didn't do this, 5 days a week, but 6 days a week. But I don't know if like, for example, my son, he's done jiu-jitsu a lot. Do I want him to like do it to the capacity that I did? And beat up his body. I don't know. You know, like it's a trade-off it's time too. You know, it's like anything you do, the more you want to excel and you know, be exceptional at it, the more you love it and become obsessed with it, it's like that's a trade-off too, energy and time. And you sacrifice other things for that. So yeah, I think something to think about. As far as me giving advice to other people to do it, I don't know, because I can't separate it from myself. So if I live a great life, and you know, but nobody can follow somebody else's life.
Sure.
Like, I can't like try to be like, you know, like you or Scotty or anybody
You'll
else.
never
you know?
be like me.
I'd never be able to shoot as good as you.
What do you do to stay fit?
Mostly jiu-jitsu, honestly.
Yeah.
And I train. I've just this past year, 9 months, I've been training more MMA a little bit, which is kind of hard on my body. But to help more as like a coaching capacity, to like help my fighters. But
Do you lift weights at all?
I do a little bit. I'm not a big weightlifter. I do maybe once a week. I don't even get it in every week, but I do a kind of a short, like hard lift. I kind of got away from doing real heavy lifts. I used to do that quite a bit. I got away from that a little bit. But I do, you know, I try to do, like I do kettlebells and things like that.
I'm assuming you don't run with your knees giving you problems.
I can't run very much.
What's food look like for you?
I try to eat very healthy. I don't, you know, I've been on like the
Healthy's an interesting word. It's like there's somebody that could be a low-fat yogurt with high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I self-experiment. That's what I do. And I haven't, for example, I've tried to stay away from vegetable oils for like almost 10 years now.
Okay.
You know, things like that. I eat a lot of meat because I like it, not because and I think it's healthy for me personally. I'm not saying everybody should do that, because I think that's one thing about nutrition. I think putting prescriptions to everybody's a little bit different, right?
Sure.
When I was a little kid, they called me Warren the Carnivorous because I liked meat all.
Just a meat eater.
I didn't like candy. I liked it. I was like, give me a steak. Or,
Got any jerky?
Exactly. So I eat a lot of that. I eat probably lower carbs just because of that, but not because I'm trying to avoid carbs. I don't really like sweets very much. So that's my main nutrition.
You've already admitted to being a weed guy. Are you into alcohol at all?
I have a drink. I'm neither like, I don't drink alcohol.
And that was a joke about him being a weed guy.
I don't drink alcohol every week,
Sure.
you know, but I you know, have some wine. We can drink a whole bottle of wine with my wife sometimes, you know, but I don't, you know,
It doesn't own you.
have a beer. Yeah, I mean, well, you know, I don't even drink, like I said, I don't even drink alcohol every week. Sometimes I don't drink it for, like right now I can't drink it at all because I'm getting stem cells. Yeah, so it doesn't bother me. But you know, socially, I like to have a drink with people. But, and then I also do, I think when I was 40 something, I'm 46, I started on experimenting on various TRT and peptides and things like that. So I'm kind of on and off that actually.
So you're experimenting on testosterone supplementation.
Different kinds, different methods, different deliveries, different dosages, peptides also. But you know, there's this myth I think people say like you have to be on it all your life or something. I was off it for 8 months last year and I was fine. I didn't feel that bad. Like, you know, I didn't do any of that stuff for a while, partly because I started on it because of the stem cells. And I'll do that every now and then. I'll go off 6 weeks, you know, and not do anything, and then I'll experiment with a different protocol. And I do think it helps. So it helps me, it's helped me recover from minor injuries. It's helped me train more. I think it changes my motivation sometimes to train. The testosterone, like I feel like I want to work out more, do jiu-jitsu more. I think the peptides have helped me with my body composition. As far as like, you know, as you get older and you get like more fat around your stomach and stuff. At least I did, and I think that helps with that. You know, so if I start getting my weight starts getting where I don't want it to be, I'll change my diet a little bit, eat a little less, and maybe do some ipamorelin or something. You know, like and fast it in the morning or at night, and that seems to help. Seems to keep me where I want to be.
you're talking about motivation and things like that. I'm not on any kind of supplementation other than like vitamins and minerals, but I hear guys talking all the time like I'm on TRT, I didn't feel like doing anything, I didn't want to get out of bed, or I didn't want to have sex, or whatever the symptoms are. And I'm like, man, I have all of those things. Like maybe I need it, like how do you deal with it's the grind? What do you do to keep yourself cranking along?
It's hard. Like I think it's probably the same as you. I kind of, you can get into more things than you want to, and you get too busy, and then life's not very fun. But I think as far as that, I think it does help. The TRT does help a little bit with that sometimes, but it's like a magic thing. It's not like you're going to be a slob and then just shoot up and wake up and be like, no, I want to conquer the world. It's not like that, but it's a subtle kind of thing. But it might be one of those things where I might just do a couple extra rounds in jiu-jitsu, instead of just coming in and doing 5 rounds, maybe I'll do 6 or 7 or 8, like that's really where it's at. It's on the margins, I think. It's not like, at least for me, it wasn't like changed my whole personality or anything. It was more just like that little, I feel it. I don't think other people notice it very much, honestly. I think it's just like on the margins, I'm a little more motivated, which does help with because I think over time that makes a difference in everything. It makes a difference on your fitness, on your, that little marginal more over 5-6 years. That can make a difference in the gyms, the businesses, everything else.
Sure.
I do. So
it's like $5 a week in the bank account.
Yeah, I think so. So I kind of recommend that to most people like our age. Like I would recommend at least try it, because like I said, it's not like people are like, oh, I don't have to be on it all my life. I don't think that's true. So.
As I'm like sitting here thinking about all this, talking about this, I'm looking at Renzo's name up on the wall. What do you think will happen when you're your grandpa's age? So granddad became this Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
All these guys, you start to see, like I'm looking at pictures online of Hickson, like he's not well right now.
No, yeah.
And you start to think about like the mortality of it all. What's the end state for you? You're going to be the gray-haired guy? By the way, your hair is very beautiful. Look at
it's real too.
I mean, beautiful.
I shave my beard because I get a little gray in my beard.
Oh, you get a little gray in your beard, do you? Look at this shit.
But yeah, no, I think about that all the time. Actually, probably too much. You dwell on that stuff too much, and like, yeah, I'm kind of I've always liked philosophy and things like that too, and I'd like to keep. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm still like excited about life.
Yeah, you're a young man. I'm not trying to be a creep here and talk about.
No, I don't even mean it like that. I mean like, whether it's jiu-jitsu or whether it's, I love doing this. I always have. Every time I've kind of tried to not step away from it, but dial it down a little bit, I get pulled back because I love it. But I don't know. Honestly, how my body's going to hold up. I don't know. I think I'm trying to, as far as the schools here in Pittsburgh and stuff, I'm trying to pass on to all the other people as much as I can. And, I really believe, as far as if something were to happen to me, the schools would be fine.
Yeah.
I believe that. Yeah. I think, I'd like to think I had something so they might not grow as fast or whatever, but I think they'd be all right. And so, I think long term, I mean, my grandpa lived a great life. He was he's very old, and he has cancer now. But he
how old is he?
He's 93, I think now. But he came down and was on the mats when he was in 86. He was doing techniques. And
I was going to ask you. So when you were like a teenager wrestling, Grandpa probably was still a strong man at that point, so he grappled around with you, I bet.
He did, yeah. He still could grapple then. And
that's cool.
He was, I think when he was 80 something, he said, he told me, he was like, do you have any old guys at your gym? I want to wrestle somebody. I was like, I don't have any 86-year-olds. That's weird. But yeah, so I don't know. I just want to be like.
Should have given him like an 8-year-old or something.
I could put him with like a 60-year-old guy. Like, it's not the same thing.
Dude, we had a guy come to the gym who, I don't want to say his name, but it was not an insult. I think he was a Marine. He was a concrete guy, and he was in his 60s. And this dude, his arms were like a freaking Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he was super strong, and he'd get a hold of you, but he'd go so hard. I'm like, damn, dude, you're old. And he was super strong, but he had to be 65.
Yeah.
And he, like a year, and then, I don't know, he probably got hurt because he was like, I think he was a wrestler in high school, and he trained like he was a wrestler, like going at it. But anyway, he was still 20 years younger than your granddad.
Yeah, and that's. I think it's how you train too. I think I might shift how I train. I am already, a little bit, but I think that's important. But I really don't know. I kind of take it like maybe this isn't good. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just drifting through life, but I think life's like an adventure. I'm always excited to see what's next. I hope it's good things, for me. But
Why would that sound like you were drifting? It just sounds like you're positive and want to see some cool stuff.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if you have this thing where you should, everything's like, I have this goal, I have this goal or that goal, and I don't know that I always have that. I have certain goals, but mostly it's just like that. It's like I want to be excited about stuff. I want to feel that like excitement, with whatever. Like I hope we can get together sometime when you're in town and do one of your courses.
Yeah, let's do that.
I've really liked. I've gotten to train with Shivworks, Craig. Yeah, and some of those guys. I know you had Todd Sharp on. I've done some of his stuff. Paul. I was thinking of There's another guy in that group that's named Todd. But
you guys have what's your guy?
Shawn Williams he was. We actually are the oldest continuing, training group that Craig started. As far as like we meet every week and train that stuff. I don't always anymore, but I've done his courses.
You've got Derek, I think, here out of this gym, right?
Yep, that's right. Derek's here. Logan, my little brother, has done a lot of the courses and teaches some of that stuff. He likes that, and I just it's one of those things I'd like to learn more about. I grew up shooting, like hunting and stuff. My family's hunters and things like that. But I don't know. I got a little taste of kind of like what you do, and it's interesting. I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of like anything when you spent years and years and years, like when you were wrestling, I was throwing corn cobs in the air and shooting them out of the air. I was doing that. Yeah. I wasn't made for team sports.
Me neither, not very much. But that's so. If I were to get into something like that, I think it would be fun. It's exciting. I've dabbled in it, and if I have the opportunity, that's maybe something like that I'd like to delve into.
That's kind of a cool thing. Firearms, it's another level of force, right? But like I always tell the story about this guy's name was Jerry. He was an Army vet. He was a little guy. He was like 130 pounds, and he had a knife around his neck, a knife in his back, he had a knife in his boot, and he always had 2 or 3 guns on him, and he'd have like weird shit like, I don't know, smoke bombs and crap like in his glove box. He had an old Crown Vic, and I know there was a hand grenade somewhere, I swear to God. He was this cool dude though. He was the oldest competitor every year in the single stack classics in Florida. So he was in his 80s shooting like these high level USPSA matches.
Well, that's another thing about it. Like that's where I kind of was going with that. Like that's something you can do.
Yeah, when you
get older,
So people would say, Jerry, are you psycho?
Yeah.
And gregarious guy, super kind guy. He'd go, no. He's like, if he throws me on the ground, I'm dead. Yeah. I can't get back up. I'm 80 years old. I'm not going to fight up with this guy that spent his life wrestling. He's like, I'm going to shoot him and cut his Achilles tendon. And that was like there's a point that you won't be able to do those things.
Yeah. But I think there's always going to be something else that hopefully that I'm interested in, like that.
Or maybe we won't have to. Maybe we'll all just smoke weed and be kind to each other, and we won't have to fight anybody.
I don't know.
Not like your days in San Jose.
I wish, but I don't know if that's
probably not going to happen either.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to happen either. That's pretty cool thinking about having. My grandfather was a pretty fit guy. He wrestled, played soccer, but I never had any memory of him being fit enough when I was of age to do that. That's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, my uncle also is. I had him on my podcast once. He was a former Navy SEAL and CIA operator.
Oh wow.
He still does stuff. He is part of ARC, Association for Recovery of Children. He does all kinds of things. He's an interesting guy.
I mean, how do people find your podcast?
Just on our website or on iTunes. I have it on iTunes. I should get it on Spotify like you have yours, but I haven't yet. But
and it's called?
It's just Stout Training.
Stout Training,
yeah. And then, but yeah, he's on there. There's an episode with him, but he also was a wrestler. And I asked him one time. I said, "Can you help me with shooting?" Because he was. when he was a SEAL, I think he was a sniper.
Okay.
That was his first, when he first started kind of going into it. And he did a lot of stuff. He's all, like, amazing guy. And I got medals from top, I can't even talk about, I don't think he doesn't talk about it too much either, but he's really a decorated guy. But I said, can you help me shoot? Can you teach me some shooting stuff? When I started getting into it more with Shawn and Craig and those guys. And he's like, man, I can't teach you anything. and then I was out. We'd shoot every now. I had a rifle. I got a new Blackout, 300 Blackout, and I shot it. It had iron sights on it. I just pulled up and we just kind of were shooting around at it. And I was like, help me, make me, like to teach me something. He's like, I can't do anything. And I was like, but we're friends. He'll help me anything. If I call him, he'll drive down here and like help me. But I don't know. It's just strange like that. But
being good at a thing doesn't mean you're good at teaching the thing.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe he realized that, because I don't think he has ever taught that. Like,
Yeah, there's a lot of guys I know, special operations guys that are badasses, but their job was being a badass, not teaching people to be badasses.
Yeah.
That's cool. How old is he?
I think he's just turned 60.
Okay, so he's still got some years.
He's in great shape. He's an anomaly. If you saw, he's been on some TV shows and stuff.
Is he like your build?
Kind of, yeah. A little bit more muscular actually than me, maybe not naturally, but he's just in great shape still. Yeah.
And you said he wrestled as a youngster?
He wrestled in college. He wrestled through college. Was a good wrestler. Yeah, he said he might have been in the best shape when he was in college wrestling.
Seems like my friend Derek Moorfield, he brown belt at our school. He's in his 50s now. He just shared something the other day. He said the two most important things in making him a man were wrestling in high school and boot camp in the Army.
Yeah.
He just shared that the other day.
I think a lot of people that wrestled, especially if you did it like a little more seriously, whether it's high school or college or whatever, a lot of people say that. And that's a lot of, like when I mentioned my podcast, a lot of it is that guys have wrestling connections and stuff, and there's a lot of talk about that. I think my uncle talked about it a lot. The guy I mentioned, Dan Hyman, he's on my podcast. He's a really, really high level finance guy, and when I say that, he's on, like, you'll see him on the Wall Street Journal and stuff.
Okay.
Like he's top of his field, like top of his field in the world, and he says that too. He's like, wrestling was a big part of like what made me have the success I've had in anything. So.
Would you say your jiu-jitsu here is wrestling heavy? You can't just take that away from your vocabulary.
I think what I learned most from wrestling was methodology rather than like wrestling heavy technique. Now we've always taught feet to floor, but I think when I first started,
tell people what that means, please.
Feet to floor, like you start standing up, right? Like you rather than
lay on my back and scoot around
or like back when we started, like probably when you started too, like a lot of times when you train with Brazilians, not Hollis as much, but like they would start on their knees training. And I never thought that made any sense. And just the way they structured practice, I think I got to experience, some of the best Soviet coaches, like I mentioned, Greg Strobel, Pat Santoro, my grandfather. They had a good methodology for running a practice and training, and I think that's more where we come in. I don't think we're, like teach more takedowns than other schools, although more than the old school Brazilians, right? Maybe, but I think feet to floor is really important. I think I also I'm gonna kind of go the other way a little bit on it. Like, I think if you just there's this tendency to say, oh, I'm just gonna learn wrestling and try to use that for years. It's a different sport, different. John Danaher talks about that a lot. We just came out with a video. Me, Shawn Williams, and Zach Esposito. I think it's on Fanatics. BJ Fanatics is a collaboration about that, and it's kind of like our philosophy of feet to floor, of taking a grappling situation from the feet completely to the floor and using it to get an advantage, right? Because if you shoot a takedown, but you end up in an omoplata or something, I don't know if you won that exchange, you know what I mean? Like, in depending on the context, maybe in a certain self-defense situations, maybe you did, I don't know. But I think the context matters a lot, in the context that most people are training, like submission grappling, right? Even MMA to some degree. Like, you have to be able to get a takedown and maintain have that takedown do a couple of things, like not put you in a bad position, take it to the floor where you have a pretty good control of the person, so they can't just get back up like in MMA, or and also like give you a path to get to improving your position and not using too much energy. Those are all the things that we kind of like wrapped into that video, and it was a big collaboration. I was down in Nashville 4 times last year filming. They were up here twice, and we experimented. And I know those guys really well. Zach is a coach at he's right now he's at NC State, and he was the developmental Olympic coach for the under 20 Olympic team. So he's a great coach, great competitor too, wrestling wise.
The interesting thing about like the conversation at hand is you take 10 black belts from around the country and they're going to say, you know, and you said, hey, like, give me some bullet points on this topic. They're going to disagree 10 out of 10, you know, like just talking with somebody at one of our events. We do a very basic intro to combative stuff, just people that have never grappled, like here's how to stay on your feet, how to, you know, create some frames and keep a base underneath you. And my friend Z Durham and Paul Sharp run that portion of the training, and part of it culminates in like 40 people fighting Z one at a time. Yeah. And he lets them get to a position where they, you know, maybe take his back, and this is all stand up. Maybe they do a duck under. He's letting them do it. You know, they're
fighting them though sequentially, right? It's not like they're not all getting them.
Yeah, well, it's 30 seconds, you know, okay, they get to his back, okay, roll out, next guy in. And it's like, Z is our age. He's showing everybody I can do this for 45 minutes, like, and all he's doing is just framing off guys and pushing them away. And these dudes are going balls to the wall, you know, trying to get in on this guy. He's 210, 220 pounds, 6 foot tall, Green Beret, black belt, MMA guy, runs a wrestling program at a high school in Tennessee now. But anyway, super specific. Like one guy I know, dear friend of mine, says, I don't like that he's teaching people a duck under, because, you know, at our school, we're going to turn that into a guillotine. And it's like, yeah, but like, and you get this, like these circle jerk conversations, like there's always a counter to everything. And like your guys' conversation, I've had guys come to the school. A guy was a Division I dude at Purdue, 190 pounds of, you know, 28-year-old muscle, graduated and on to other things. And I'm like having him show us some takedown stuff, and after watching him, I'm like, I don't want this guy to touch me. You know, he's double-legging dudes, you know, 18 feet before they slam in the floor. And it's like, if you did that to somebody in a parking lot, like, that guy's unconscious with a broken back and head, and your arms are all tore up from running them right down the. I guess where I'm going with that is, it's like the nuances as the vocabulary gets broader. Like, there's got to be like some basic stuff. How do I not get taken down? Just grab a kid that wrestled for 2 years in high school, and he's going to just rip most people off their feet.
Yeah,
but if they have no understanding of the topic at hand.
Yeah, I think like for that, it is a broad topic, and it's something that hasn't been as thoroughly like maybe trained as much as the ground, right? Like and in some way, at least in jiu-jitsu schools and things like that. But
you're talking about
like the feet to floor transition, right? And or whatever that means in the context. And then there's context, right? There's a self-defense context. There's the submission grappling context. There's the gi jiu-jitsu context, which is different. There's the MMA context, which is changed a little bit too. That's why I think it's so hard to talk about, because you have to define all those things first. You have to define, like, and then something else you mentioned, the Purdue guy, skill context, right? Like, if you're teaching police officers for self-defense, those guys are not going to be that Purdue guy ever. Like that shot might work for the Purdue guy in a fight, in a self-defense situation. If you teach that to those cops, that's going to be detrimental to them, because they're never going to be that guy, right? Like that's. I think
I'm never going to be that guy. Like, he's done that shot 87 million times,
against a lot of resistance. Other guys are really good at resisting big guys. So I think those. That's why there's so much disagreement about that, because we don't define those things. We don't define, you know, it's defined by skill level, context that you're teaching it in, you know. And then I think what you can agree on, though, like, is what we try to do in that video too, is for a certain context, so they'll just call it submission grappling is the main one we focused on. What are starting with the principles? What are the principles that we want to accomplish, and then you go backwards to the technique, right? Like you're saying, like a duck under. Is a duck under good? You can get into weeds about that. I think a duck under can be good in that context if they have the skill level, if it's done properly. You know what I mean? Like, so I think if you're teaching somebody on a weekend to do a duck under and they don't practice it and they're going against skilled jiu-jitsu people that have a guillotine, no good. If you're teaching somebody, a police officer, to duck under somebody for self-defense, that might work, you know, like that. So I think that's, you define that.
Nuances.
If you start with the principles and you were clear on what context you're talking about, and then you go, I think then the techniques start to make more sense, right? And then you look at it the whole way through, the whole context, like not just, oh, I hit this, you know, I hit this shot. Now, what did that do for me? Did it put me in a good position on the ground? Maybe not. You know, maybe it put me in a guillotine, or maybe it put me in a guard, or maybe it put me in, or maybe it made it so the guy can just pop right back up. So I just wasted a bunch of energy and took a risk when I didn't need to.
Skin my knees.
Yeah, or risk sticking my head in a submission, you know, like, so I think as that develops, I mean, there's a lot of good people that have, I think John Danaher talked about that a lot. That's one of a few years ago now, but he was saying, somebody asked, what's the next thing? You know, you did your leg lock thing. What's the next thing in submission grappling in that context? And he's like, feet to floor. That's the next developmental, the area that's going to develop.
It does seem like, for a lot of reasons, people don't train that.
Yeah.
My coach just built a new gym. It's off the charts, and there's a freaking huge mat about this big that's all the spring-loaded judo mats, you know, like you can do freaking backflips on it and bounce around.
So he did the like the food. That's what I'm doing down in my my new strip district location.
Yeah, the springs with the 2 layers of plywood.
I'm trying it.
It's so cool, man.
It feels good. Like,
well, I'm not a gymnast. I can stand, jump, do a forward somersault in the air, land on my butt, and bounce back to my feet.
It feels great.
Yeah. I mean, like, you get slammed. I mean, you still can get hurt, except the whole floor is moving. So you've been on them before.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's almost like I've got to remind myself, be careful, because as soon as I come to a mat without one, there's one the other mat next to that one. Well, yeah, I mean, there's still concrete underneath it, and now you're not. You can get lazy, like, you know, you stop break falling and things because you know that it's not going to hurt.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Then you start to develop bad habits. But it's cool because now you can do more aggressive takedown stuff.
Yeah,
you're scared to on a regular concrete floor.
Well, I think that's why people don't train it, and I agree with that, actually. I think we don't go takedown heavy in our fundamentals program because I think there's a little bit more risk of injury. And especially if you're not ready.
My hip has been jacked up 10 years from a dude doing a hip toss, and I was going to land on 2 foot of crash pads, and I was expecting it, and all of a sudden I landed on the commercial carpet on the concrete, and I was like, okay, here we go, and then I was like, you know, like a car hit me, and I was like, oh fuck. So I've got something busted up for almost 10 years in my hip from that. Just from something so stupid.
Well, I think there's just inherently more risk in it. Your joints are bearing weight, you know, you're falling, there's bigger movements. But I think the other part of it is, like, as you learn, like, let's say you're a beginner in grappling or whatever, as you learn to move your body and protect yourself, it gets less dangerous. So that's why I designed our fundamentals program, or fundamentals curriculum. It's not as takedown heavy, because I think they go through that, they learn how to move their bodies, they learn how to protect themselves, they learn how to fall from a lower amplitude, like a sweep or something, like a lumberjack sweep or a scissor sweep or something. And then they get used to that, and then you can at least know how to protect yourself when you are maybe going with more weight-bearing joints and falling from a little further and stuff like that. So
you don't see too many old grapplers, though, that are like, I feel great.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You don't go to a judo school and see a bunch of guys that are, you know, they're all creaky and.
Judo's the worst, right? Like, I mean, not the worst sport. I love judo, but it's like,
you just mean the damage.
100% damage. Like, I tell these guys, are like, oh, I want to go train judo. I'm like, well, better contact your favorite surgeon or stem cell clinic because you're probably gonna get hurt. You know? But yeah, so
We've got one guy that trains near us. His name's Buckles, and he's jiu-jitsu and judo black belt. He's about maybe 6'1", 200, just a ripped beast. And I don't know if he's got any injuries.
Yeah,
He's kind of a beast. He's doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, goes to bed at night, wakes up early, eats good, lifts weights. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, he's.
When did he start? Did he start young? Did he start later?
I think probably the last 20 years he's trained.
Well, there's some people that are just resistant to more resistant to injury, but I think it's also like how people train.
Maybe he got lucky a little too and never had some stupid stuff happen.
When you're training, do you go
Balls to the wall?
Yeah.
So, if any of my friends are listening to this, they call me 110 Mick, which is funny because I always joke. I go, "You fuckers never even seen 50%." I joke with them. I try not to. I mean, of course, as you learn things and
But you have different speeds, or do you have one speed?
Oh God, no! I've got different speeds. I mean, I like to train with the ladies as much as the guys, just to be their training partner. But also, like, we've got some badass girls at our school, and if I'm not going to, strong arm a 100-pound lady like I would a 200-pound guy, but I definitely have used horsepower. I'm stronger than most guys my size from my construction background. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm fairly strong pound for pound from my life of labor.
Yeah.
And it's easy to, like, we had a guy come to the gym a couple months ago and he takes his shirt off and I was like, holy crap, like that dude is jacked. And I'm talking to him. He was a Division I lineman and now does like strength training for these guys at a school. And his freaking biceps were like this. And barely any grappling experience, and he just like removed me from him just like a little kid. And it was like, all right, that's scary. That's super scary. And so like then I had a choice. I can't match this guy with horsepower.
Yeah.
And so I was able to like tie him up and got him in a shoulder lock, but I'm like everything I had, and he's trying to like break his shoulder loose. And finally I'm like, all right, the round's over. Like, I'm not going to stay away from this guy because it would have hurt me because he was just willing to just go.
Or maybe hurt himself.
Yeah, exactly. So like I have had to learn. You said it a minute ago, like changing the way you train. It's somewhat a grieving process for me. Watching, dude, I used to be able to jump these tables.
Yeah.
I could just stand and jump over one 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We should try it when we're done here. I could do things like that, and like then you can't. I'd jump into the bed of my pickup truck and jump down, and guys will see me do that, and they're like, "Oh, how's your knees?" My knees are fine, but then now the side of my knee's hurting right now. You start to like have those little things. Or I like to play on the bottom a lot, and like that loads up this busted hip. If I'm down on the bottom playing around like that, it's like, well, I can't do that anymore. And I know you shouldn't be there anyway, but I can do stuff from there. I know how to do some things. So you like get in the habit. So you now watching my peers and coaches have to evolve as we age. It was depressing the last few years, kind of watching that, and I've kind of accepted it. But I think there's like a fine line where you can accept it. Like I'll see guys, hey man, you want to roll? No, you know about my shoulder. And it's like, well, just lay on me, like do whatever, and I'll let you, smear me into the mat for a minute. Older guys or guys that are super jacked up. And it's like, I don't want to be that guy where I like can't roll around with my homies.
Yeah.
That seems like the worst place to be.
I think that's what it is. I think you kind of, if you know the people and you can trust them. We have a group here in this gym in Zealy, it's just specific to here. Our north location, they call it Team Krusty, like Krusty the Clown. I don't know, it's a long story, but it's all over 40-year-olds. And
I've trained with a bunch of them.
Yeah, you probably trained with those guys. And they try to, I don't even know if you could say they train light, because a lot of them don't, but they know each other, so they feel comfortable.
I may have been talked to by one of them one day, and he said, we don't do that here. I said, all right, okay.
Well, what did you do?
I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't doing anything, but like at my, I'll tell you later off camera. It wasn't nothing bad. It was nothing bad.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I was probably at like 60%, and he was more like wanting to like talk about
lower.
the spring rain or whatever outside, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah. No, it's always an interesting thing with open mats. I think I was talking to somebody else about this.
It wasn't like a technique I was doing that was like an illegal technique. I think he was just not
just the intensity. You're a little more. Well, that's what I mean. Like open mat, everybody comes into it with different ideas, different day.
I'm here to win. I'm here to send you guys home. I'm just kidding.
You come into this school to kick everybody's ass.
I'm just kidding. No, not at all. Not at all.
No, I know. But it's. I think that's weird because everybody comes in with different ideas.
You feel somebody when they touch you, and you can kind of feel like a. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, what are your intentions with me right now? Yeah. I had a dude one time. I was new to the place, and he says to me, he's on top of me, and he goes, "I am here to train."
What's that mean?
And that's exactly what I said. I'm like, me too. And he goes, "No, I am here to train." And I'm like, that's cool. So are the rest of us. And then like he's freaking flipping over me and bouncing around and like doing these cartwheel passes. And I'm like, dude.
I think when he said that, I would have launched into that Conan monologue, the Genghis Khan, like crush my enemies, he's driven before me.
No, he just he was like telling me, give me all you got. And no, I'm not here to like blow my knee out or have you hurt me or I think he ended up poking me in the eye about 5 minutes later, but that didn't actually happen. But some people have different intentions. I think you got to communicate with people.
Yeah.
Like I'll say to people like, I'll do whatever you're willing to do, but just please, like, I have this deathly fear. Like, you guys are into leg locks in here.
Yeah, we do a lot of leg locks.
And I'm like, dude, that is, like, get off my legs.
Yeah.
Get off.
I always ask people, though, if I don't know you, if you're, like, from another school or whatever, and I'm training, and especially if I don't know what your level is, I'd say, like, are you okay with leg locks?
And I totally am. I'm just saying, like, you guys got a foot fetish here? You into toes? What's up? But it's like, if you don't know somebody and they go ripping back, it doesn't take much at all.
Well, it's more dangerous.
And I'm not suggesting anybody here is doing that.
Well, I do think leg locks are more dangerous too. I think for a lot of reasons. I think you have less sensitivity in your leg to know, like, rather than the arm. I think that a lot of the strong, like heel hooks and toe holds or twisting joint locks, those are all more dangerous.
They scare the heck out of me. I'll be like you.
Yeah.
Limping up for real though.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. Yeah, like you said, you have so much more dexterity in your upper body and
sensitivity too.
Yeah, sensitivity.
Like it's like
you don't like you feel nothing and then all of a sudden your leg's broken.
And I think one of the things with heel hooks too, particularly heel hooks, like that's that technique. Everybody criticized IBJJF. Now it's legal at black belt, but adult. But I think it was valid. They were really smart with not doing that because a heel hook, even they allowed toe holds, right, for years at black belt, and then they didn't allow heel hooks. Well, the difference of a heel hook is you can't let go quick. You're tangled up in there, right?
That's what scares me.
And not only like with a toe hold, the person could hurt themselves potentially, but if you're not intending to hurt them, you can let go very quickly. A heel hook, if they spaz the wrong way, you can't let go in time a lot of times.
That's the part that freaks me out.
Yeah.
My coach, Dan, is very much into exploring things, and so he brought Chris Wojciak a couple times up to the school. Great kid, great teacher.
Yeah.
It's funny, he walks around with his glasses on. He's rolling with his glasses. But I'm messing with him, and of course, I'm just being a smart ass, but I'm like, dude, I'll just, come rolling into me, I'll just pop you in the face.
Leg lock me, I'm kicking you to
Dude, so he, in like 3 minutes, drugged me to the floor and made me tap, 117,000 times in 3 minutes. I mean, it was so incredibly quick.
He's good.
And
He's a bigger guy too, like, right?
Yeah, he's probably something like that, 190. But maybe he's even smaller than that. But that's his thing. Yeah. So it was just like, and there was nothing my repertoire of defending that from a guy that's world class at it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to punch you in the head or pull my little tactical pen out and poke you in the eye. Like, I'm so screwed.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
That's what I think about leg locks though too. I've even some of my MMA guys are like, you can't focus on it that much because it's not the most prominent thing, but you're seeing more leg locks in MMA now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's something that as people get better at it, and credit my team, John Danaher mostly and some of the other guys, they've got so much better at it and so much different philosophy on it, too. Before it was just like, I'm just gonna rip on somebody's leg or their foot. Now, then people still do that. There's a lot of that going on, but now it's like they control you, you can't reach them, things like that, and they just break your leg. And I do feel like it's a big part of jiu-jitsu. Like we have a leg lock in our fundamentals. I said we don't do takedown heavy. We do one leg lock because I think that you should start getting familiar with that because it's part of it, you know.
And that's why it's doing good in MMA. Guys are not good at defending it. So some guy that can show up and twist your freaking leg off and you've got no way of dealing with it.
And anything that's new, like that's probably going to dissipate that advantage, right? I think it's going to go back to, you know, but anything that's new that people aren't familiar with is going to have an outsized impact, right? It's going to be more effective, you know. But I think leg locks, I think we're still on the upswing. People are going to learn and get better at it, but I think it's going to level off after a while. You know, you see the percentages of like big tournaments in grappling, even in gi jiu-jitsu. I did it in 2012. I took the stats on the gi world championships for black belt. And just, I don't know if anybody else had done it at that point, but I just compiled it. I watched them all as much as I could. And it was about 70% of the submissions were from the back, right, in the gi. And then the second biggest area by far was leg locks in the gi in 2012.
Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that.
I didn't either. It was surprising to me. And so, you know, fast forward, and then Gracie Mag did one in, I think, 2015, similar study. And it was very similar, still at that time, very similar, like percentages of submissions. And then, you know, fast forward to like now there's everybody doing stats, like ADCC trials has their stats, and leg locks are a very big, I think, an outsized part. I think it's too heavy on that right now. I think because a lot of people aren't as familiar with it, you know. But so that's why you can get a little bit more advantage. That's leveling off a little bit, right? But you know, like when Gary and Gordon and those guys first started doing that, nobody knew how to defend them. You know? They were just like, when they got some of those positions between Eddie and Cummings, they would just be like, well, I don't know what to do, and they tap, you know. But now a lot of people know leg locks, but I still think it's,
My knees are aching right now with all of this conversation.
my knees are aching because they stuck needles in them. But yeah, no, I think leg locks are important to learn, but I think that you have to be careful training them for sure.
What is your game look like? What are your favorite submissions? What do you do?
I've always been good at like getting to the back.
Okay.
So that's my favorite thing, if I can. And then recently, I have been really delving into leg locks. I started when I was a purple belt with, and I got exposed to great teachers of leg locking. Shawn Williams is actually really good leg lock stuff as well, and John and Gary Tonnen trains. He was just here recently, and I get to train with him some and learn from him. And so I think I've been doing a lot of leg locks, partly because I want to be good at it. I did ADCC trials the last couple cycles, not the last one, but the ones before that, and I really felt like I needed to get up to speed on the leg locks because everybody was doing them. So I focused.
What if everybody was jumping off bridges, huh?
well, then I would not be in that sport, right? The bridge jumping sport. But I had to go in there, and all these guys are twisting each other's legs. So that's what I want to be able to get out of it, not get my knees ripped off. So that I've been doing a lot of that. So my favorite stuff, and I like front headlock stuff. That was my big thing in wrestling. I had a good front headlock in college, stuff from there. So I've kind of turned that into it's a great position for jiu-jitsu. I think it's one of the best positions. If you look at, talking again about feet to floor, risk reward, if I could pick anything, it'd be a front headlock. I always want to put you in a front headlock. You think about that, it's like,
You've done that movement so much too.
that's I have a good skill set there, and I'm comfortable feeling it. But just from a risk reward perspective, right? You look at that, like I'm close to the most highest scoring, the position that gets the most submissions, the back. I'm close to that. I have several like really good neck attacks right there, right? And I'm on top of the person in a way, so they're carrying my weight. So it's a really, I think it's a positionally superior position. So I've always done a lot of attacks from there. So, guillotines, anacondas, all that kind of stuff. There's so many attacks from there, and then going to the back from there. So that's the combination. I like to get into there. So that's my favorite
I dig it.
stuff.
Dude, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
I appreciate you coming out and doing this. I want to.
We tried for 1 year almost. No joke.
And I know you're really busy, and I appreciate you coming out. I really want to also, like, I want to train with you and I want to get to know you better. I know you've come to the school and we're always missing each other and stuff like that. I
didn't even think you work here.
I'm all over all the 4 schools. I'm here like once or twice a week at Z-League, but I'd really like to learn from you as far as like some of the shooting stuff, and I'd like to get on the mats with you sometime too. So
Let's do it. You got
Yeah.
this excuse of your knees.
for now, I got an excuse. I'll be good.
What do they give you, like a month or two to?
I'm going to take 2 weeks doing nothing. So CPI is pretty intense. They say you're supposed to take 3 months without fully rolling. I'm going to do 2 weeks and then hope Scotty's not. Well, we talked about it before when I saw him when I was down there, and I said I'm going to take 2 weeks, and then I'm probably going to take another 2 weeks to 3 weeks lighter, right? And then I'm just going to get back into it, you know. So but they say 3 months, but I'm hoping to be fully, you know, and let's call it like 5 weeks. So
All right.
fully back, yeah.
All right. Don't rush it.
Yeah.
And ruin it.
Yeah.
You guys that tuned in, I hope you dug the conversation. Covered a lot of ground. Check this guy out online. Their website.
Stout PGH. Stout PGH is our website, and then at all the social media, it's the same thing, at Stout PGH.
And you have like different Zealy and
Different locations, yeah. If you're anywhere in the Pittsburgh area, we have stuff all around the Pittsburgh gym. Four locations around the Pittsburgh area. Always welcome. We love having visitors. We don't charge map fees, so come and visit us. We also have events. We have stout fights. We do Muay Thai events, Jiu-Jitsu event, Pro Jiu-Jitsu events, and we've done MMA events. And we have camps, training camps, like I think we mentioned earlier, and we've done Thailand camps, we've done Costa Rica camps, and yeah, we have. Check us out, any of that stuff.
got any of those planned right now?
Not right now. Actually, I don't. I didn't do the Costa Rica camp this winter, and I don't have anything like that on the schedule. We always have events coming up, so we have our couple Pro Jiu-Jitsu events coming up. If anybody's interested in competing on it or watching it, it's on pay-per-view also. So hopefully catch those if you can.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them. And if you're not training some type of martial art, fix yourself.
Thank you.
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.